You thought there was a number that once you hit it would finally allow you to exhale. Maybe it was your first six figures or your first quarter of a million or your first half a million. No, it was your first cool million. You told yourself that once you had enough money in the bank, enough clients on the roster, enough recurring revenue, and enough evidence that the business actually worked, you would finally feel safe. And then you hit the number and something strange happens. You didn't feel as different as you thought that you would. Maybe you felt relief for a moment. Maybe you even took the time to start the celebration. Maybe you took the time to thank God. Maybe you even looked at your bank account and thought, I did that. But eventually, another thought entered your mind. What about next month? Can I actually do this again? What if sales slow down? What if this was the peak? What if this was a fluke? What if something happens and suddenly the number that you thought would finally, once and for all, make you feel safe became another number that you needed to protect? And that is when you discovered something most successful people are not prepared for. Having more money and feeling safe with more are two completely different things. Now, trust me, I know this because I have lived this. I crossed the $1 million mark for the very first time back in 2014. And eventually, I had the evidence, I had the revenue, I had all of the recognition and the awards, and I had the clients getting the incredible results. Now, on paper, I was successful. But if I'm being honest with you, internally, I could still find myself checking my numbers like any minute now, the other shoe was going to drop and it would all disappear. Now, that is the phrase that I have been using to describe it. The evidence said safe, but my body said brace. And once I understood that distinction, so much of my relationship with success actually began to make sense because money can change your circumstances without automatically changing what you've learned to be true about feeling safe and expecting something different to happen. You can have more and still absolutely anticipate less. You can be successful and still scan for what could go wrong. And you can have more than enough money to solve the actual problems that are right in front of you. And at the same exact time, still make the decision as though there is not enough. I realized that you can have a thriving business and still struggle to relax inside of it. And that is why simply making more money does not necessarily solve your problems. Because if more money automatically created internal safety, every wealthy person you know would feel safe. But you and I both know that's not the truth. And we have seen countless celebrities talk about all they have and how they are still waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see entrepreneurs make. They experience fear at one revenue level, so they assume that the solution is at the next revenue level. They'll say things like, I'll feel better when I just hit a 500,000 or a million. And then before you know it, it's 2 million, 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. And then they start to tell themselves they just need 6 months of operating expenses. And then that 6 becomes 12. And then it becomes another contract. And then it becomes another revenue stream. There is always, when you think like this, something else that has to happen before you give yourselves permission to finally exhale. Now, at some point, you've got to ask, what if the number is not the problem? What if you're trying to solve an internal experience with an external achievement? And that, my friends, is an entirely different conversation that we are getting into this season on the Move to Millions podcast. It's one of the reasons that I have become so passionate about what I call safety with all forms of success, because I don't just want you to make the money. And I don't just want you to build the business. I don't just want you to become successful. I want you to actually be able to experience the success that you have worked so hard to create. I'm talking about fully enjoying it, receiving it, stewarding it, anchoring into it, to be able to make decisions from what is possible instead of constantly protecting yourself from what might actually go wrong. Because here's what we know. Eventually, making more without becoming safe will become much more expensive. I call that expense the survival tax. And I recently devoted an entire episode on the Move to Millions podcast to it because there are 6 specific signs that I've identified that can tell you whether or not you're building your business from success or you are still operating from survival. Now, some of them look so responsible that you might not even recognize that you are living in survival mode at all. Now, if what I just described sounds familiar, I want to invite you to go watch or listen to episode 421 on the Move to Millions podcast, The Survival Tax, Why Success Still Does Not Feel Safe. And as you listen, don't just ask yourself, how much money have you made? I want you to ask yourself a much more important question. How safe do I actually feel inside of the success that I have already created? That, my friends, is where the real conversation begins. That is what we are getting into in this episode. Go watch or listen now, and I will see you inside of the full episode. Let's go.